Hello to you all and welcome. If you're new, I'm Jennifer. Cory and I are so grateful to have you here with us on our channel. Please bear with me today as I've come down with a head and chest cold and my voice is definitely going to be rough throughout the video, so I apologize. We have 6 DIY projects to share today, all inspired by high-end decor and well-known brands but on a budget and much easier on the wallet. We'll be sharing looks from Zara Home, Pottery Barn, One Kings Lane, and Magnolia. So let's get to creating. Our first DIY comes from One Kings Lane, a table I found while online browsing, but it's priced at $159.98, which is the sale price from $235. We found this vintage iron base at a local thrift store here in Knoxville, and I fell in love with it. The price was only $15 for this beautiful piece. It was hard to find something for the top that wouldn't break the bank. Marble remnants were all well over $100. We have this first option, which is a marble tray and from a southeastern salvage home emporium for $27. The way it sits face up reminded me of a bird bath, which I didn't like. Cory thought to flip it over and give it a sanding to remove the grooves, and I liked that much better. We also found this thin piece of metal at a salvage yard. It was already cut and the perfect size for the top of our table. It was only $5 and more closely matched the inspiration if we painted it black. So let me know down in the comments which you would all pick. Option 1, the marble round upside down, or option 2, the metal round painted black to match the base. Since I truly loved the inspiration table, I chose to use the metal top for now, so Cory set out to give it a good sand to make sure it was free of imperfections. The great thing about this is that we can always change out the top later if we get tired of it. We chose this textured spray paint in black by Rust-Oleum to help it better match the base. We used the textured black spray paint as the first coat, gave it a second coat in matte black spray paint, and then one last coat of black textured paint for the final coat. 3 coats of paint in total. Once the underside dried, Cory flipped it and repeated the process. Last, we sealed it with a matte clear poly by Rust-Oleum. Once everything had completely dried, Cory set about attaching the base to the top. Now, since we didn't really want it to be a permanent bond, we tried to use liquid nails, even though it states it doesn't bond metal. Again, we weren't looking to keep it glued forever in case I changed my mind about the top, which I've been known to do, but the liquid nails just didn't make a good adhesion, even for a temporary bond, and that metal top is dangerous. If it fell over, it could definitely take a toe off, so he went back in with the polyurethane adhesive in black that will give us a temporary hold that will be easier to remove later. I didn't get that on video since this is the point when I started to feel really poorly and was taking a much needed rest. With the base on and before it had time to set up, he made sure that everything was still centered. And here's a look at our completed table. The cost of the One Kings Lane table on sale is $159.98. Our cost was approximately $32 with paint, a savings of $127.98. Our second DIY is inspired by this Zara Home vase I found while looking for more brown tone vases to add to my home. While at Hobby Lobby, I found this cute black vase 50% off, costing me $7.50. I thought it would make the perfect addition to my fall styling, so I set out to transform it into something similar to the inspo vase from Zara Home with some paints I had on hand. I started with the color Rusted Pipe. Now, I had no idea that I was getting low on my sponge brushes that I love to use, so I had to cut up this little sponge to help me limp along on my project since I wasn't feeling up to going back to the craft store. I began by giving the entire vase a good coat of the first color, Rusted Pipe. Once the first color had dried, I then went in to add all that beautiful dark brown with the color Raw Umber. I began by pouncing on the darker color here at the bottom, like the inspiration vase has. Then I began adding it to the top where the Zara vase is the darkest and blending it down. I then added just a bit of water to the color Raw Umber to help it blend even more. For a final step, I added just a bit of water to Rusted Pipe and gave the darker top color some added dimension. Last, I had Cory give the vase 2 good coats of poly in semi-gloss. And here is a look at the completed vase. The Zara Home vase cost $35.90, and our cost is $7.50 since I had all paints on hand, a savings of $28.40. Our third DIY of the day is inspired by this Pottery Barn tray priced at $199. I bought this sheet pan from Amazon for $5.69, and I thought it would work perfectly to recreate the Pottery Barn tray. I also picked up these wood handles from Amazon priced at $6.80. I thought they looked close enough to the leather wrapped handles of the Pottery Barn tray since they are wood. Now, this is when I started to realize we may have a problem with this seemingly easy DIY. I didn't take into account the angle of the sides of the sheet pan, which I will explain the difficulties a bit later. We used a combination of different textured spray paints, and it created a leather look to our tray. We started with flat black, then used hammered in black, then textured in black, with a final coat of poly in matte. This gave our tray a very unique look, which you'll see here at the end. Cory once again started by giving the sheet pan a good sand to help the paint adhere to the surface. You don't have to use an orbital sander. This can be achieved by hand sanding as well. He also made sure to get all the angles and edges. Next, Cory started the painting process with the 3 different black paints. First, he used the flat black for the first coat. While the paint was still semi-wet from the first coat, Cory added the second coat, which was the hammered spray paint in black. The third and final coat is the textured spray paint in black, which was added after both of the other 2 coats had dried. Since the sheet pan has an angled side, I knew the handles wouldn't sit flush and would angle down, causing the tray not to sit correctly and make the handles unusable. So Cory first had the idea to use wood cut into a triangle to offset the angle and create a flat surface for the handles. I wasn't entirely on board with this idea because the wood was noticeable even after painting, so we came up with the idea to bend a small washer slightly upward to create spacing for the bottom of the handle to rest against, thus creating an opposite angle to keep the handle straight. The final step was to give the tray 2 coats of poly in clear matte for protection. Once the tray had completely dry, Cory added the washers and the handles, which he drilled through the sides to attach to the sheet pan. I'm so sorry for not getting that portion of video for you all, but this cold really had knocked me down. Here's a close-up of how the handles look after being attached with the washers. The underside of the washer is bent upwards to accommodate for the angle of the tray and keep the handle level. Also, here's a close-up of the beautiful finish Cory achieved on this tray. It looks like leather and I absolutely love it. Here's a look at our Pottery Barn inspired tray. The Pottery Barn tray costs $199 and ours cost approximately $27.49 with paint allowance, a savings of $171.51. For our 4th DIY, we are tackling another Pottery Barn inspired item, these eucalyptus napkin rings priced at $89 for a set of 4. I first began with these eucalyptus picks from Hobby Lobby priced at $1.79 per pick. These are a bit larger than the Pottery Barn napkin rings, but I like that they would be a bit more noticeable and decorative. I also had these rings on hand. I'm sure I bought them at Hobby Lobby, but I couldn't find them anywhere on their website, and I had removed the top of the package and didn't have anything to reference them to. They are 2 inches in diameter and come in a pack of 10. I did find some on Amazon for $6.99, so I will link those below. And to give the eucalyptus that gold color, we are spraying them all, including the rings, with the spray paint by Behr in Antique Brass. We only applied 1 coat since I knew I wanted to add some rub and buff to each of the leaves, but if you only wanted to spray paint them and eliminate the added step of rub and buff, you would need 2 coats of the spray paint. I used a foam brick to hold the picks while drying. Once they had all dried, I began the process of adding the rub and buff in European gold. Now again, you could eliminate this process here, but I like the darker color of the rub and buff, so I opted for the additional step. I had run out of foam brushes at this point, but I remembered I had this small sponge applicator, which was the perfect size for this project. I mixed the European gold with a tiny dot of ebony and mixed the colors together before applying. The rub and buff doesn't add a whole lot of color, but it does add dimension. And again, you can totally skip these steps and go straight to creating the napkin rings. I added the same color mixture of European gold and ebony to all the leaves. I also applied the rub and buff to the back side as well. This takes a little bit, so put on a good podcast or audiobook, maybe put on a Dower Diaries playlist and enjoy the process. Once they had all dried, Cory gave the leaves and rings a coat of matte poly to protect them. Once dry, I began to disassemble the stems to make my napkin rings. The Pottery Barn rings had 3 eucalyptus leaves each, so I set about trying to figure out the easiest way to achieve the look. Next, I needed to determine how to attach the leaves and which direction I needed them to lay on the ring, so I used a napkin to help me figure it out. I also made sure that where the ends of the metal rings met is where I would glue the leaves down so that it hid that part and made it all seamless. I ultimately decided to use 2 leaves attached together on the stem and 1 leaf by itself to cover up the area where I glued everything to the ring. I repeated the same process for each of the 8 napkin rings I was going to make. And here's a look at our Pottery Barn inspired napkin rings. The Pottery Barn napkin rings cost $89 for a set of 4. Ours cost $10 for a set of 8, a savings of $168. Our fifth DIY is again inspired by Pottery Barn. These small terracotta pumpkins on sale for $23.50 and regularly priced at $29.50. I first began by applying the color linen to each of the 3 pumpkins I already had on hand in my decor from years past. I then was going to use the color mushroom to add those darker details and shading that the Pottery Barn pumpkins had. I love repurposing things, and I had grown tired of the color of these little pumpkins because they are very orange, but I do love their size and texture, so I thought they would make a good dupe for the terracotta pumpkins. I have a set of 3, the largest measuring at the 3.5 inches, which matches the Pottery Barn, and then they get smaller from there. I gave each pumpkin 2 coats total to make sure all the orange was covered. Next, I began the process of aging them with the color mushroom and adding all those shaded areas. Since I was out of foam brushes, Q-tips came in quite handy. I didn't just run the color all the way down the indention, but rather added it randomly, longer in some indentions and shorter in others. I think this creates a better look than stripes running down the pumpkins. I even hit some of the high points of the pumpkins with the darker color as well to add more dimension. Here's a look at our Pottery Barn inspired terracotta pumpkins. The cost of the Pottery Barn 3.5-inch terracotta pumpkin is on sale for $23.50, and our cost was nothing, so we made a savings of the total price. Our final DIY project of the day is inspired by Magnolia and is this basket plant stand on sale for $31.50, regularly priced at $42. We found this small basket planter at a thrift store for $5, and I thought it would be so pretty for this creation. And at a local salvage yard, we found these 3 legs for $1 each. I think with their detail, they will add some vintage quality to our planter stand. I did give the basket a good cleaning, and after I noticed that it was painted and some of the paint was chipping off, I originally thought I would leave it alone, but it also had a gold color to it that was clashing with the wood of the legs, so I thought we would stain it to match. Cory first set out to create a base for the basket to rest on, as well as something to attach the legs to. We had some scrap wood on hand. Now, the Magnolia planter has a very thin base with brackets attaching the wood legs. Now, since our legs were made to be used without brackets, our base needed to be thicker. I also liked that ours would look more like a stool, which adds some vintage charm to the overall planter that the Magnolia one doesn't have. Cory then gave the base a good sand to smooth out all the edges. The great thing about this basket is that it has a round opening at the bottom, which will make it easier to attach the base since we won't need to drill through the basket. We'll just use a large size washer screwed into the bottom wood round to keep them attached. The legs we purchased had some black gunk on them, so Cory used some mineral spirits to remove it. The mineral spirits also help to clean the wood for staining. We were hoping the stains would come out because we really wanted to keep the detail of the legs at the top portion because we knew we would need to shorten them to make the planter the correct height. Thankfully, the mineral spirits did the trick. It also showed me how dark the wood was going to stain, so I knew for sure now that the basket needed to be stained as well. But as with DIYs, they don't always go according to plan, which you'll see here in a bit. Next, it was time to figure out how long the legs needed to be. Our basket is 11 inches tall, and we knew we wanted our planter to be about 24 to 27 inches tall, so we decided to make our legs 16 inches. After cutting each leg, Cory had to come up with a plan on how to attach the legs to the wood round base and make sure each leg was distanced the same from each other. He began by finding center. He then used a can of stain to make a circle, after which he found 3 points measuring 5 inches from each other to form a triangle and drew the lines to connect them. He then used the diagram as a guide for where he would drill into the wood to create the holes for the legs to set into. Now remember, our legs were probably off a vintage stool and have the added piece on top that will sink into the wood base. If you want to recreate this and your legs are flat, you'll need to use fasteners to attach them to the base. Cory then created the holes, making sure that each hole remained at the same angle for each leg. Once we had the legs assembled, he added glue to the top and then set each leg with a few nails to keep them in place. We made sure to keep them all angled correctly before nailing. He added 1 nail at a time to allow for adjustments to the legs. He used 3 nails in each leg for stabilization. Next, Cory leveled off each leg so that it would sit flush to the floor. He then gave the whole piece a good sand to prep it for staining. Since the legs were most likely cherry or maybe mahogany, I opted for a neutral toned brown stain, and my favorite when adding a dark color is Jacobean. Now, we could have just clear coated the legs and they would have been beautiful, but we had the base and the basket, so we knew it all had to be stained the same color. Next came time to stain the basket, and this is where we had to make another adjustment to our plan. The basket had some kind of paint on it that wouldn't allow the stain to take, and when it was placed on top of the stand, I just didn't like how they looked together. It doesn't really show on camera, but the basket has a weird gold green undertone, so we shifted gears once again. We opted to paint the entire basket in flat black because I thought it was the most complementary color to the darker wood legs. Once everything had dried, Cory then gave the entire planter base and basket a good coat of poly in semi-gloss. He then attached the basket to the base, and we had ourselves a new planter to add to our home. The Magnolia basket planter is on sale for $31.50, and the cost of our basket planter came to $8, a savings of $23.50. We've had so much fun creating these DIYs, and I love how they have transformed our home. Even though we are inspired by high-end dupes, each and every one of our creations is unique, which adds to the overall appeal. Our channel is about finding those special and unique pieces that no one else has and transforming your space one piece of decor or furniture at a time. Creating new items from secondhand or thrifted pieces is so rewarding and keeps them out of landfills. Our hope is that you found some inspiration today. If you did, please hit that like button and share this video with someone you know. If you are new to our channel, we do all things home, DIY projects, antique, vintage, and thrift shopping, as well as home decorating. So join our community and subscribe today. If you do, don't forget to turn that bell notification on so that you'll be alerted when we upload our new videos. Thank you all so much for being with us. Don't forget to leave us a comment and let us know which of the DIYs was your favorite. Also, let me know which tabletop you would have chosen, option 1 or 2. We can't wait to hear from you all. We hope you all have an amazing week ahead, and we will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye for now.